Welcome to our first video in Sewing 101 from the Starfleet International Corps of Engineers. The materials you see are what I use on a daily basis when I am creating uniforms and patches for the USS Cerberus. I'll start with my measurement tools. As you can see, this is a metal yardstick. It's 36 inches long, and I believe an inch wide. Let me double check. It is indeed. It is, pardon me, it is 1 1/8 of an inch wide. I purchased all of these measurement tools from my local sewing shop, and that is Fabricland here in Canada. My next measurement tool that I rely upon is my quilting ruler. This quilting ruler is 24 inches by 6.5 inches, and it is a fantastic tool. It gives me the ability to do multiple measurements on multiple pieces of cloth, and I'm able to do most lengths in one cut, depending upon the size of the cloth that I'm working with. This device here, this is a suction cup handle which goes directly on top of the quilting ruler, and that's for ease of moving it around. And I'll show you that now. The handle can fit anywhere on the quilting ruler, and it can give you perfect control for whenever you're doing a project. You simply press down, press on those toggles, and you can lift the quilting ruler with no problem, and you're able to use enough force to hold down the cloth so that as you're cutting or as you're marking, you're not having any of those lines move on you. I don't think any sewing room would be complete without the tape measure. This is a standard 60-inch tape measure. You can find them in various sizes, smaller or larger, but the general size tape measure that you will find is 60 inches. Let's talk about cutting. The tools you see here are what I use in every project. I'll start on the left-hand side, and these are my cloth shears. These are probably one of the most important and precious items that I have in my sewing arsenal. These shears never touch anything but cloth, and I think if there anyone else who sews out there, or if you're just new to sewing and you need a little direction on that sense, your cloth shears should never touch anything but cloth. When you do that or you use it on anything else, you're going to dull your blade, and any good cloth shears are an investment, so you want to protect that investment. This set of scissors here, this is more of a utility set. I'll use this set to cut interfacing, cotton, felt, general fabrics that are not going to be worn against the body. Again, this is just a smaller pair of scissors, a general utility scissor. And finally, out of the scissors, these are my thread snips. Now, you may be wondering, what about another set of thread snips? You may see them, they're quite small. I find that when I'm using them, and I think that there isn't a lot of control with them, and I have in the past actually nicked the fabric and caused a hole. And if there's one thing about uniforms, any deviation in style or mistake that you make, your customer or your friend that you're making this uniform for, they may not see it, but you'll always know it's there. So I go and I use a flat bladed scissor that's sharp, and I take care of all those threads. Finally, in my cutting arsenal, I have a rotary blade color, and this is a 45mm blade. You can find these honestly anywhere, be it a hardware store or an actual sewing shop. They're relatively inexpensive. You can sharpen the blades. There are materials out there that you can sharpen them. I'll be honest, I don't. I simply recycle them and put them in the metal recycler. So And I use this often, and I use that in conjunction with my quilting ruler. Moving on to needles. We have various sizes of needles here, and I'm going to talk about each one. The first is a 10 gauge, 11 gauge, 12 gauge, and 14 gauge. Now, gauges of needles are the sizes of needles, and those represent the size of diameter and a little bit of a design difference in the needle. I'm not going to get into detail about that. I certainly can in a later video, because that is important information for you to have as you go forward. Now, these 3 boxes of needles are designed specifically for my sewing machine. It is a Janome, and I make the effort to purchase these because the right tool for the right product makes a great job. Now, there are people who will use different brands of needles. This box over here is from Schmetz, and there are many manufacturers of needles, and ultimately it comes down to personal preference. I'm also going to identify one other point. On here, these are a universal needle, which means they will work with most cloth and they will give you a good return on your product. There are specific needles designed for specific cloth types. For example, denim, jersey, stretch, all of those materials have specific needles. Some of the smaller tools that you are going to use is a needle threader. I think this is a standard needle threader that we're all familiar with. This is another type of needle threader, and if you don't know it, I'll try to bring this into frame for you. If you can see, there's a small space in between here, and that is where your thread goes, and your needle would then press up against like that with the eye of the needle there. And as you push the needle backwards to it, that small piece of metal there will then push the thread through, and as you pop it out, your thread will then come through and you can pull that easily, and you now have your needle threaded. I use this often when I'm at my machine, when I have to thread quickly, and I'm able to just take a broken thread, put this through, and I'm back to the machine. No sewing kit would be complete without a stitch puller or thread cutter. If you don't have one of these in your sewing kit and you've never used one, I don't think you've ever been sewing. A little piece of personal protective equipment here. We have our thimble, and then of course this is for your thumb and your fingers to make sure that if you're working with heavy duty fabric, that you don't end up pushing a needle into your skin, because it can happen. The friendly sewing tomato. That's right. This is where all of your push pins are going to reside. I believe that this is in every single sewing room. It's in every single sewing case. I can remember being a little boy seeing these. And part of my first sewing course that I ever took was we had to make our own. And I'm glad I took that course, because the one that I made didn't last. The final piece of equipment that we have today is the bobbin holder. You can find these, again, in any sewing shop. They come in many different sizes. You're going to be able to find them in cases, or you have this rubberized ring here. I like the rubberized ring because I use hooks in my sewing room, and I can just put this on a hook, hangs on the wall, and I can easily grab it. So it works very well for me. And the colors that you see here, these are all the basic colors that I use whenever I'm sewing my Star Trek uniforms. That concludes the basic tools video for the Starfleet International Corps of Engineers Sewing 101. Thank you for your time. Should you have any questions, please contact me directly, Captain Jeremy Estelle of the USS Cerberus in Region 10. I look forward to hearing from you, and I look forward to seeing your sewing projects in the future.